Episode 56, Ventriloquist, Comedian, Impressionist, and Singer, Terry Fator. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Terry Fator. Terry is a ventriloquist, impressionist, comedian, and singer. He won season 2 of America's Got Talent in 2007 and has been performing his award-winning show at the Mirage in Las Vegas ever since. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
How alive are you feeling right now?
Incredibly alive.
So I have a request.
Okay.
I was hoping we could maybe start this off with the national anthem in one of your favorite singing voices.
Oh, okay. You got it. So let's see. Well, man, I got so many favorites. Let's do Elvis Presley.
Perfect.
And I can move my lips. Is that right?
Well, no, it's an audio podcast, so no one will know.
Okay, so here we go. Starting the podcast out. Oh, say, and you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night.
Okay, pause.
What's that?
Pause. Perfect. Now switch it over. Continue with Willie Nelson.
For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
I love it. My God, you are brilliant. Terry, your life story sort of began serendipitously when you picked up a book about ventriloquism at the library when you were just 10 years old. Mm-hmm. What caught your attention?
I was always an entertainer. I always wanted to entertain. I wanted to be on stage, and it didn't really matter to me what I was doing. So from the time I was about 2 years old, I've been in front of people. One of my first memories is standing in front of a crowd and entertaining them. And so I would get up for my school talent shows, and I would sing sometimes, and then I would do a reading from a book sometimes, and then other times I would act. I would do a scene from a play. And I had kind of run out of ideas. And so, I did magic. I did a magic show one time. I did balloon animals another time. And so I'd kind of run out of ideas at 10 of what I was going to do for my school talent shows. And when I found this book, I thought, hey, there's not another ventriloquist in the school, so this will be fun. And I went out and bought a puppet, and the rest is history.
I mean, was there anything in particular about, speaking through a dummy that just seemed really compelling to you, but other than it being a rare talent?
Well, I think, one of the interesting things about that, and that's a question that has a lot of different facets. And the reason is that I've one of those kids who always had ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So I was always very, very active, and my brain had a very hard time concentrating on things. Now, luckily, my parents did not drug me. They just basically, I have a lot of difficulties at home, but one thing they did not do was put me on drugs to try to quell that. And so I was able to develop, where there was discipline, I wasn't allowed to just run wild. There was discipline. I honestly think that ADHD helped me as a ventriloquist, because one of the things about attention deficit people is that our brains are working in overtime. So I'm usually 10 thoughts ahead of somebody as we're having a conversation. So as a ventriloquist, when I have one or two characters, when I have one on each hand, for some reason, my brain is able to kind of split into all these different personalities. So I really think that that psychologically and even in the subconsciously, I knew that this was going to be really good for me. At least that's my theory. I'm not a psychologist, but that's my theory.
And so you knew at a young age, like you're not going to be an astronaut, you're not going to be a professional athlete or even a movie actor. You had your heart set on ventriloquism, like that early?
Yeah, and I think the thing though that really turned the corner for me as a kid, I got this book, and for the life of me, I can't remember what book it was, but it was a book on ventriloquism. And as I'm reading through this book, there was a picture of a contract, and this ventriloquist that had written this book and I found this book at a magic store, Jeffrey's Magic Land in Dallas, Texas. And so I was reading this, and I see this contract, and it showed that this guy got paid $500 to play a club. It was, I guess at the time it was like they had a supper club, and my little 11 or 12-year-old brain thought, $500. I mean, this was 1977 when $500 was a fortune. And especially to a little kid, that was a huge fortune. So immediately I thought, wow, I can really make money doing this. So I think that's what really set me. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't love the art. It's just that I realized then that I could actually make a living doing it, is what I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it because I thought, what a fun way to make a living.
Well, I'm guessing you weren't exactly the most popular kid in class playing with dummies. Kidding aside, I mean, were you a bit of a loner?
No, I was not. I was always the center of attention. And the fact that I was funny helped. So the fact that there were puppets involved, I mean, I didn't carry the puppets around, so it wasn't a weird thing. You only saw the puppets if I was on stage. And my routines were always funny. I didn't write my own routines when I was young. What I would do is I found a place called the North American Association of Ventriloquists out of Littleton, Colorado. It doesn't exist anymore. And I got all these dialogue books, and I went through all these dozens and dozens of dialogue books, and I picked all my favorite jokes, and I kind of wrote my own routines based on that. And my routines were really funny. And then also I was quick. And so I was always making people laugh. Now, the funny thing is I was kind of a little geek, and the girls did not like me because I was a goody two-shoes. I was raised very, very religious. And so I never smoked or drank or swore or did all of the stuff that teenagers typically are attracted to. So I was not popular with the girl. I was popular. I just was not the one the girls wanted to date. I was the one all the parents wanted to date their girls. Put it that way.
Right. So was a lot of your childhood all-consuming practicing and performing ventriloquism and your comedy, much the way a violin or tennis prodigy would be? Like, how much sacrifice was there? Was there any kind of normal childhood you had?
There wasn't, but it wasn't by choice. So luckily for me, and of course at the time I hated it, I just didn't realize that there was a bigger plan involved. My parents, and it was not my parents' plan. My parents' plan was just that they had free labor. They owned a janitorial business, and they put me and my brother and sister to work. I was about 8, my sister was about 5, and my brother was 9. And we worked full time. I mean, we were going to school for however long school would last until 2:30 or 3. And then we would go and work cleaning buildings and doing janitorial work up until about 9 or 10 or sometimes even 11 o'clock at night, go to bed. And this was our life. And then in the summers, we were working for the business as well. We were going in and restoring apartments and painting apartments and cleaning carpets. So it was a miserable life for a kid, but it wasn't as miserable for me because I had these grandiose dreams of being a famous ventriloquist one day or being an entertainer. So once I became a ventriloquist, I would spend those countless hours of drudgery practicing my ventriloquism. And one of the ways I would do that was we would have a radio that would have music playing, and I would listen to those songs and I would sing along without moving my lips. And the funny thing is that's when I practice now. When I practice is when I have to do something that I don't really care to do, like if I'm working out or if I'm on a long 5.5-hour flight, I'll be working. And that's when I work and practice and write routines and everything, because I learned that the best way to make those long hours of physical labor that I did not like, I learned to practice and said, one of these days I'm going to be a ventriloquist. So.
Wait, on a plane?
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking to the person next to you without moving your lips?
Oh, no. I do it under my breath. And I'll write routines and come up with ideas. But I mean, it happens all the time. Like this morning, 6:30 in the morning, I wake up and immediately I start writing jokes. And so I'm sitting there and I'm writing jokes, and my poor wife is all tired and everything. And I got up. She goes, "You're not getting up?" And I said, "I have to. I've got some jokes that I got to go write." And so I got up and went in and wrote those jokes, and that's what I did this morning. That happens a lot, though. You know, people like me, our brains work so fast, and I'll wake up and have an idea, and I have to rush to my computer so I can put them all down.
What I think is amazing is you're not just a ventriloquist, which in itself is an incredible talent, and of course a comedian, as you pointed out, but you're a singer and you're an impressionist, and you pull all of these talents together in one act. It's just incredible. If anyone that hasn't watched, I mean, either go to way back to America's Got Talent, or you can find plenty of videos since then. It's amazing. So how did you come up with the idea to integrate all of these different talents? I don't know if that had ever been done before.
It was really purely accidental. I mean, I have people that talk to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're a genius. How did you come up with this idea to do all this?" It's like, you don't come up with this idea. If you don't have the gift, you can practice for the rest of your life and you'll never be able to do impressions. It's just like you either are born with it. Now you have to practice to perfect them, but you don't just wake up one day and go, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to become a ventriloquist who does impressions of singers." It really, the ventriloquism came very naturally to me within 2 or 3 days. I was fairly good as a 10-year-old doing ventriloquism. And I could sing from the time I was a little kid. And even when I was young, very young, I would be listening to things like Michael Jackson when he was a kid, or, Donny Osmond. And they called it puppy love. So and before my voice changed, I was able to do these songs. I didn't know that I was doing an impression of them. So then when I became a teenager and a young adult, and you've got Def Leppard, and you've got, but then of course, country music was kind of coming around at the time too. So I had Garth Brooks and Randy Travis and Def Leppard and Ozzy Osbourne and all these different, and for some reason I was able to hear these songs and just do an impression. And it was a complete revelation to me that I was an impressionist. Somebody told me this when I was almost 30 years old. I was complaining because we were at a bar listening to some person sing and they were terrible. And I said, "I don't understand why they don't just sing it like the original artist." And my friend kind of looks at me with this confused look and said, "Terry, you're the only person I've ever known in my life that can do that." And it was like a light bulb went off and I said, "Oh, okay." So I thought everyone could do it because it came so naturally for me. And the funny thing is I went to see this impressionist in Vegas, and I was just doing a typical ventriloquist show where I was doing the jokes and, set up punchline, set up punchline, set up punchline. And so I went to see this impressionist who was a singing impressionist, and he was going from one voice to another, to another, to another. Nat King Cole and Natalie, Garth Brooks, and he was doing all these voices. And I'm sitting there going, "My gosh, I do all of these voices. Why don't I just make my own show and I'll have my puppets do it?" That's how quickly. And the next day I went in and had one of my puppets sing "Friends in Low Places" from Garth Brooks, and the crowd just about fell over. And I went, "Okay, I'm onto something here."
That was it. That was the revelation.
It never occurred to me that it was going to be anything really remarkable or amazing because it came so naturally to me. So,
yeah. Well, I know they're not mutually exclusive, but of those 4 talents, is there one that you identify with more than the others?
Not necessarily. I'm a big proponent of anyone who has a talent. I want you to use your talent. And if you have 2 or 3, try to figure out how to use them in a show. A good example of that is I was in a band for 15 years. And I had this drummer in my band, and of course I was the front man because I did all the impressions of singers. And then I would pull out a puppet and we would do a comedy routine, and I would have one of my puppets do a song by Hank Williams Sr. or something like that. And I had this drummer named Gary Scow, and he would drum, and I found out that he could juggle. And I said, "Gary, do you think you could juggle while you're playing the drums?" And he said, I'll see. So he started playing the drums, and he was balancing stuff on his nose and juggling with one hand while he's playing the drums. And I'm like, that's fantastic. And that's just kind of always been my philosophy is if you have a talent, try to figure out how to incorporate it. And so that's really, it wasn't like where I sat down and said, I'm going to mix these together. I just said, hey, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Let's do that. Make a show out of this.
Well, so where does that leave people like me that have 0 talents?
Well, you pick the gifts that you have. Everybody has a gift. Obviously, you're a good interviewer, see? So,
but the jury's out. We're not done with the interview yet.
You just have to learn how to juggle while you're doing an interview.
So you sort of alluded to this earlier. You said the ventriloquism didn't take all that long. We always talk about talents, are these what is, if you will, you said you're a religious man, what's sort of gifted by God, if you will, versus something where you work really hard over years and years and you learn something. So do you feel it's one of these things where, hey, if you want to take any of those talents, you can do it. You can be a great ventriloquist. You can be a great comedian. You can be a great singer, whatever, impressionist, just practice. Or is there some innate talent that you have that can't be replicated?
I think that it's a mixture of both. Look, there's a lot of singers in the world. And some people just can't carry a tune. And if you're tone deaf, you'll never be able to sing. Never. It doesn't matter how hard you try, because your ears are never going to, your brain is never going to be able to understand where the notes are. So that's just out. But if you can sing, you can improve your ability to sing, and you can get exponentially better than you are now. But there's only one Celine Dion. Celine Dion is born with those vocal cords. Now, don't get me wrong. Celine Dion works harder than anyone on the planet to take the gift that she's been given, as with, whether if you believe in God, I believe in God, so I believe God gives it, whether you believe nature gives it to you, whatever it is, you can take that gift and you can become the best at it. Some people are incredibly naturally gifted and never actually develop that gift, so they never really reach a certain point. So first of all, you have to find out what you're gifted in, and that's when, and but like you said, if you can sing, anyone can improve with hard work and diligence. But you may never be Celine Dion because there's only one. And there are certain, I'm convinced now, I've taught people how to be ventriloquists, and almost anyone can do it. But to do it at the level of myself or some of the other top ventriloquists in the world, you have to be born. I think there's something about the way your mouth is shaped, the way your tongue works, because the tongue has to be incredibly flexible, which is why my wife loves me. I'm kidding. No, it's an old ventriloquist. It really is a very old ventriloquist joke. But your tongue, because the tongue has to do all the work that your lips normally would. So, the P's and B's and M's and all of those letters that have to use the explosion of the lips have to be recreated through the tongue. And some people just don't have a tongue that will allow them to do that. It's just like some people cannot roll their tongue. Some people can. So I think if you can do it, depending on whatever gift you were born with, it depends on what your skill level is going to be. But you can always improve no matter what. Just with hard work and diligence. Yes.
So if I think about your life, there's Terry's career pre-AGT, pre-America's Got Talent, and your life post-AGT. And you were working as this, comedic ventriloquist, and I guess at some point thrown the other talents in there too, 20 years, 25 years before you made your debut on that show, 2007, I believe. Mm-hmm. So what was that period of your life like? Where were you performing? How often were you performing? Were you loving it, or was it drudgery? Give me a sense of that chapter.
It was great. I actually really enjoyed it because I always had this understanding that I got to do what I love to do. So very many people never experienced that. So I had to kind of reach this point in my life where I was doing it for the love of the craft, and incredibly grateful that I was able to make a living and pay my bills, and that maybe I would never get really rich and famous. And
but where are you doing that? How are you doing that? How often?
Oh, I was doing it at fairs, like county fairs. I kind of started slow. I started at playing little bars near my hometown, and I had a band, little band, and we would start singing. And then we moved into being able to play small fairs. And then we found some agents who booked more fairs. And so we really, our bread and butter was fairs. And then I had the incredibly fortunate luck to meet someone. And if I had it to do over, I would seek them out. But I started doing school shows. And I was doing 3 to 5 school shows a day, 30-minute school shows, where I was doing kind of a little bullying program and everything. And I didn't get paid a ton, but I was, when you add a couple of $100 and you do 5 shows, you're making $1,000 a day. So that's kind of how it worked. And it was very, very grueling work, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was so, like I said, I was grateful that, so many people have to get up and go to a job that they hate. And I never had to experience that other than being a janitor growing up.
Well, I know a lot of comedians, before they made it big, when they're just, traveling show to show, city to city, and most of these not very glamorous cities at that, They'll talk about they love the 10 minutes, the 15 minutes when they're on stage and they got the audience and they've got the applause and the laughter, but there's a lot of loneliness. So was it a struggle just in terms of being completely on your own, or did you actually enjoy that nomadic lifestyle?
No, I had this very weird thing in my brain that allows me to be positive and forget the bad and remember the good. And so for me, I have very good, happy memories of all of it. But also, I've learned. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood, and I learned how to overcome the trauma and not allow myself to be a miserable person. So I actually loved it. And when I was doing this, and so I would try to do my best to make friends. I'm still friends with a lot of the people that I used to travel with in the fair circuit and stuff. It never was, I just was always content and happy wherever I was and what I was doing. And I was just as happy off stage as I was on, but I was working. I think a lot of it is that you have to keep working. If you get 30 minutes worth of material and that's all you have, you're going to go on stage and that's going to be your world for 30 minutes and that's going to be your happy place. But when you're off stage, if you're constantly writing and constantly coming up with new things and constantly, you're going to be happy all the time because you're going to be doing what you love all the time. When I went on America's Got Talent, I had like 3.5, 4, 5 hours worth of material because I had been writing and creating and doing this for years and years and years. So it wasn't hard for me. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It's like, I've got 5 hours worth of material. What am I going to not do? I had so much good material. And so I think it's just, it depends on your work ethic. If you just lay around in the thing, yeah, you're going to want to drink and you're going to want to be miserable. But I was always coming up with new things and excited to try them the next day. So I'd write a new routine when I'm sitting all by myself in the hotel. So
let's talk about America's Got Talent. And I want you to be honest here. Was it a complete shock to you going into this competition that you won it? Or did you have this incredible sense of confidence that, hey, not just you, Terry, but I mean, a ventriloquist act of all things could actually win that? I mean, there's a lot of amazing talent on that show. So were you just thinking like, hey, this will be fun, some nice national exposure, or were you going for it, day one?
No one was more shocked than me when I won America's Got Talent. I think in Christmas Vacation, Clark Griswold says, I couldn't be more shocked if I woke up tomorrow morning with my head sewn to the carpet. I honestly, I went on America's Got Talent for one reason only, and that was to hopefully garner some fans and then make it easier to book myself at elementary schools. So there was just no, to me, it was about as much chance of winning the lottery as I had to win it. And so it just never, a lot of that was that I took the pressure off of myself. I fully expected to get voted off every single episode. And I was all excited because I had hired a publicist and I told her, I said, I've got a check ready. I'm going to send it to you the day I get voted off. And I want you to start working on milking, the work that I did, the stuff I did on America's Got Talent. And I just kept going through. And then I ended up winning. And I ended up sending her the check and she went to work for me. And so that was kind of fun, but never expected it. But, I think a lot of it is that you just have to put your best foot forward. Every week I felt that I did a good enough performance to make it through. I didn't expect to get through, but I felt like I had earned getting through. So therefore, when I went through and there we were on the last episode, I was 100% positive the other guy, Cass Haley, was going to win the show. And I said, great. I can't believe I got in the top 4. And then it's like, then I got in the top 3. And oh, wow, I'm the second runner up. That's better than I could have possibly imagined. And then kaboom, I won. So I think a lot of it was just my mindset. I was grateful for everything. So I would not have fallen apart if I'd gotten kicked off.
So you go from, fair to fair, school to school, doing this show, making $100 here and $100 there, to winning this competition and getting $100 million deal as a headliner in Vegas. I mean, your life turned, upside down overnight. So you're now one of the highest paid performers in the world. What was that transition like for you?
Well, it wasn't as crazy as, if you look at my life, it seems like it was, because I ended up going to 2 divorces and I'm on my 3rd wife. Never in a million years did I think growing up that would happen to me. But it's amazing how money changes things. And I've never cared about the money. To me, it's all about the craft, the art, working to create the best material that I can for the fans that come to see me perform. So the money for me is always kind of not even close to being my main priority. In fact, it's way down the list. And so if you kind of look, it seems chaotic, but it really didn't affect me as it might have affected some others, because I work all the time. So my goal was, okay, so I got a headlining gig at Mirage. I'm going to put together the best show I possibly can for the Mirage. And then when I was finished with that show, I immediately started. I kept saying, I'm exhausted. I need to take some time off, but my brain doesn't let me do that. So I said, I'm going to start working on the next show. So I would rewrite the show, and 6 or 9 months later, I'd put in some new stuff. And so I've rewritten the show. I've been at 11 years. I've rewritten the show something like 20 times at the Mirage. So you can come to see me every single year and you'll see a different show. And for me, that's what it's about. The money is all, it's been traumatic because I've had a lot of people take advantage of me, and I've had a lot of things go wrong with that. But it doesn't destroy me, because I've never really been about that anyway. I'm about the craft.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the craft. I mean, the creative process in particular here. I'm just trying to think in terms of coming up with new ideas. Do they just randomly pop in your head, or is there some structured process you go through to ideate? And then how do you know if something's any good? How do you test it out?
It does work randomly. Sometimes a random idea will just pop into my head for a character. Other times I might hear something on the radio, or I might see something on television or in a movie. Somebody might suggest something to me, and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And so it comes from every possible different direction. The key is to make sure that you're looking for that you're always aware of something, that an idea can be coming from anywhere. So I don't ever just rest on my laurels. I don't go to a movie just to be entertained. I go to a movie to analyze and watch and see if there's something that can help me as a writer and help me as a storyteller to tell my stories better. So it's really, that's kind of the key, is to be ready for that inspiration. And when that inspiration hits, so the first thing is you come up with the idea. So you'll go, all right, I want to create a character. I don't do anything with cars. I don't have anyone who has anything to do with cars. So what can I do? And so do I want to make a race car driver puppet? Do I want to make a taxi driver puppet? Do I want whatever? And then it's like, no, wait. I think it would be really funny, and I've never seen this before, if I make a crash test dummy puppet. And then all of a sudden the jokes start to write themselves. And then you can do songs about cars, or what I'm doing now is the crash test dummy puppet in my, his name is Rex, W-R-E-X. And his songs, he sings songs that I used to sing when I was a teenager, driving around listening to, and he's an Uber driver. So, which is hilarious. As soon as this crash test dummy comes out and says, I'm an Uber driver, the audience just busts up.
So what does it take to bring one of these new ideas to life? So from the moment that you come up with one of these ideas to the moment that you are on stage performing this act in front of a live audience in the Mirage at Vegas, how much time are we talking about?
Everyone is a little bit different. It can be, sometimes it can take 2 or 3 months. Other times it can take several years. I think for the Rex puppet, it took about a year, because we were going through drawings. At first, I wanted it to be angry. I wanted it to be an angry puppet who was so irritated because he had been in so many accidents. And then it kind of developed where it was like, well, first of all, I'm not an angry comedian, so I don't do negative humor. My stuff is always very positive. So I thought, well, that's kind of a departure from me. I thought, well, what if he's scared? So I started saying, my artists that were doing, I said, give him a scared look. Like he's like surprised or scared all the time, because, a crash test dummy would be scared all the time. And then once we get all the drawings, then they start doing the sculpting, and then they start sending me pictures of the sculpts. And I can't do any of that myself. I have no talent with that at all. But they'll send me emails and pictures of the sculpts, and we'll settle them and say, yes, that's the guy. And then they actually craft him. And throughout the entire process, they're sending me pictures, and we're working. And then I really can't come up with a voice until I actually hold the puppet in my hand. It's weird. I can't see a picture and do a voice. I have to kind of hold him and then start working, and then or him or her. And Vicky the Cougar was the same way. I kind of had that same process that I went to LA and met some ladies, and I was like, holy cow, these ladies look more plastic than skin. So I said, I need a character like that, a cougar puppet. So I called this guy and I said, I want her to look like she's, really like had so much plastic surgery that there's only things left plastic. And so I picked her up, and immediately as I started working with her, this Mae West voice came out, and it was like, how you doing? My name is Vicky the Cougar. So it was like, Immediately, that's really how they come. They and sometimes the voices will they'll evolve. My Maynard Tompkins Elvis Presley impersonator character, his voice was way different several years ago, and so all of them evolve. It's just like we all do in life, though. I'm a completely different person than I was 15 years ago.
How much daily practice do you need to do to stay on top of your game?
Well, to get to the top of your game, it's going to take a lot. You're going to have.
I mean, once you're there. So, like, you perform at Vegas, and when you're not on stage, how much of your day?
Almost none, and here's why. I perform almost every single day. I do an hour and a half of performance, and for that entire hour and a half, I never ever phone a show in. I focus with absolute intensity on that hour and a half to make sure that it is as perfect as I can possibly do it, that my lips aren't moving, that my voices are good, that everything is working. And when you do that, that's basically an hour and a half of practice. Now, your voice can only handle so much, especially when we're doing all these voices and you're doing all these different, you're manipulating your voice. So if I practiced for much longer than that, I'd blow my voice out. 11 years running, I haven't even had Vegas throat. I mean, I literally I'm a machine. And the reason is I keep that down. Now, as far as writing, that's a constant thing. Creating, writing, I'm doing that all the time, every day, no matter where I am. I'll be at Disneyland, having a wonderful time, and I'm constantly thinking. I'll see someone, and it'll make me think of an idea, and I'll immediately put it into my notes in my phone.
You're not at Disneyland today because it's been shut down.
No, I'm not.
So, Terry, you do hundreds and hundreds of celebrity impressions. Do you have a favorite?
It's really hard to say. We did a couple of my favorites earlier. Willie Nelson, I love doing Elvis. I love Michael Jackson.
Wait. I want you to tell me the reason, but through Michael Jackson.
Okay. I just want to say that I used to listen to Michael a lot when I was a little kid, and it was always a lot of fun. And of course, when Thriller came out, it was like, ooh, that's the best album I've ever heard in my life.
So that's Michael Jackson. But the thing I love I like the ones that are really, really, that have a ton of character, which is why I love Michael Jackson so much. Because when Michael Jackson, he's got that little vibrato, so he's like, she's out of my life. And so it's a lot of fun to try to recreate that. And you have to use a lot of muscles to do that. You have to use your diaphragm muscles. You be able to manipulate your voice. And I do things with my vocal cords that most people can't even understand. I'll try to explain it to my wife. I'm like, sometimes if I'm sick, like I had laryngitis a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to do the show. And the way I was able to do the show was by moving the sound I was making to another part of my vocal cords. And my wife is like, you lost me. I don't even understand how that works. And I'm like, well, for some reason I can. And I think that's something, though, that impressionists have that other people can't. I think we're able to find different resonate, and we can manipulate our vocal cords in ways that normal people with normal vocal cords can't do.
I don't want to get too deep here. I'm having too much fun. But when you're performing night after night in front of thousands and thousands, do you ever find it difficult to take pleasure from the little things in life? When you're in such a high, then how does everything else not become such a low?
No, I don't. But I think that's something, again, like we talked earlier, I had a lot of trauma in my younger days, and I learned as a very young child to take pleasure in anything I could find to take pleasure in. For example, a leaf or a flower or a puppy so I found that I was able to find happiness in my life. And then as I grew older, I began to learn that happiness is a choice. So I had a 20-year marriage that was miserable, absolutely miserable. But it was a happy time for me because I made it. The relationship was miserable. Let's put it that way. Had a horrible relationship with my first wife. And it's like 20 years. And because I said, I'm going to choose to be happy even when things are difficult. And now it helped that I was on the road 11 months out of the year. You can have a 20-year relationship with a marriage with two people that don't get along if you're never home. But it was really after I got the Mirage that we realized, wow, this isn't going to work because we don't like each other at all. I'm going to be home all the time now. But, finding pleasure, I get so wrapped up in the show that I don't really, I do get a high. I mean, there's a lot of energy, and I'm feeding off the energy of the crowd, but It's not, I don't make that, that's not really the focal point of my life. I've learned to compartmentalize. That's one part of my life. That's what I do. But then I get home and just laying in bed with my wife, Angie, laying on my shoulder and watching a movie is as much of a high as being on stage. So I've tried to find that pleasure in everything I'm doing, regardless of what it is.
So a lot of these Vegas acts come and go. You've had one of the most successful shows that's been running at the Mirage for over a decade now. And I know that chapter's, coming to an end. I'm sure there'll be another chapter. But in and of itself, I mean, it's incredible. So why do you think you've had so much staying power?
I think it's the commitment to always writing new material and pushing myself to always make the next show better than the last. It's not enough just to write new stuff. You have to make sure, we all know about the sophomore slump. Somebody will come out with the most awesome album in the whole wide world, and then their second album is like, oh, wow, that wasn't very good. And so it's not enough just to create. You have to push yourself. You have to try to figure out a way to make it even better, even funnier, even more amazing than before. It sounds like it's an impossibility, but it's not. The human ability to have to be creative and have ingenuity is limitless. There is no cap. So as long as you can think, you can continue to create, and you can continue to create more and better than what you've done before. And I don't mean bigger. A lot of things that movies make the mistake of is they think if they're going to do a sequel to something, it has to be bigger and more explosions and more dire. It's like with Star Wars, we can do a planet. And then when they came out with the Force Awakens, it's like, no, now we can do an entire galaxy. It's like, no, come on, you lost us here, So it doesn't have to be bigger. It just has to be new, and it has to be fresh, and it has to touch us in different ways. And that's really my commitment. So I think that really has a lot to do with it. A person who's doing the exact same show every single day is never going to last 11 years. And you're right. We're not, and I'm not actually getting canceled. I'm moving. So we're going to be making that announcement very soon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was never a cancellation. It was always a move. So we just had a guy in town that wanted to get a big scoop. And so he reported half the story.
All right. Well, I'll be waiting for that.
I'm excited. I can't wait. I kind of know where it is. We're about 90% sure where it is. And we'll be making that big announcement very soon.
All right. So, Terry, I'm struggling a bit with how to use your incredible success story as a model for others to emulate. And I've read that you don't like it when people say that you're lucky. And I don't want you to misinterpret. I mean, you worked your tail off perfecting your craft for 2-3 decades. That was not luck. Nor do I think America's Got Talent, winning that, was luck. I watched you, and I'm telling you, you deserve to win. You were incredible. It was an amazing act. But the fact that there was even a national show created called America's Got Talent, that was complete luck. And if it weren't for that show, you probably wouldn't have had a national platform to showcase your talents, and you'd still be traveling town to town, fair to fair. So, I guess what's the message that you want to convey to people that want to be inspired by what you've done?
Well, if you read that, I don't like to say that I'm lucky. I was misquoted, because I never said that. I don't like when someone says it's like you won the lottery, because it's nothing like winning the lottery. You go out, you buy a ticket, and that's all you do. So luck is very, very much involved in my success. For example, America's Got Talent was on that year. The Mirage was about to change from Danny Gans. They wanted a new headliner. That year, they were looking for a headliner. The president of the Mirage and the brass at the MGM, the entire corporate brass, saw me on America's Got Talent, liked me, and said, if I win the show, they're going to offer me a contract. All of that is lucky. If it had happened the year before or the year afterwards, I would not have had the success I've had in Vegas. Now, I still think I could have been a success, but it would have been much, much harder, and I would not have had the level of success that I've had. So I definitely believe that luck is a part of it. It's just, if a door is going to open and you're not ready to go through, that's on you. And the doors are, the luck involved is which doors are going to open and when they're going to open. You have to be prepared. And I think the way to utilize my success for the average listener that may never, ever reach my level of success is this. I was never looking at becoming rich and famous or becoming a headliner in Vegas. That was never my goal. My goal was to be the best at what I could do. and for myself. And it was never about being rich and famous. It was never about being a headliner in Vegas, which I definitely wanted to. But if I had never gotten out of the schools and fairs, I would have been just as happy there as I am now. It just would have been a different lifestyle. Instead of, driving a Tesla, I'd probably be driving, a Kia. So that's really the difference. And I love driving my Tesla, but my happiness is not based on the Tesla. My happiness is based on inside of me. It's based on how good of a job I'm doing. So I find contentment in my life by getting out there doing the best show. And it's exactly the same contentment I found when I was performing for first graders. So really, do what you do, find what you love, be the best at it for yourself, because you're going to be so proud of yourself when you get out there, no matter where you are and who you're performing for, or do whatever, whether it's entertainment or any other thing. And that's where, and then if the success comes, yay. But if you find your happiness before, you're going to be happy after. If you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy when you get rich and famous either. So you got to find that happiness in your own self and in your own accomplishments.
So I know hypotheticals are somewhat ridiculous, but I still like to ask them. So if America's Got Talent never happened, do you think you'd still be doing town by town, fair by fair, or do you think that journey would have ended? And were you ever at a point where you wanted to throw in the towel?
Without a question, I'd still be doing it. There were times when I did want to throw in the towel, when I'd get in there and there would be one person. And I told this story in America's Got Talent where I went in to do a 1,000-seat theater and there was one 12-year-old kid sitting in the front row. And it was like, wow. So it was like, there was that moment of just thinking, is this ever going to happen? But it was those moments though that I grew, and I came out of that moment saying, you know what? I still got that paycheck. They hired me to come in there and perform. They didn't care how many people were there. So they still paid me, and I put that money in the bank, and it helped me make my mortgage, and it helped me make my car payment, and it helped me take a nice little vacation at some point. So I said, you know what? It led back to that whole thing of I would still be doing the exact same thing. I just would be doing it at a different level. That's all.
Terry, as you know, the name of this podcast is called The Art of Excellence. So what's your definition of the word?
I think excellence is doing something that makes us feel that we're doing it at the best capacity that we can possibly be doing it at. And that's going to change, because right now you may be doing it as well as you possibly can now. And hopefully in a year, you'll even be doing it better. And that to me is excellence.
I like that. I cannot tell you how wonderful this was. You're fantastic for being on this show and sharing your time. And I love not just all that incredible talent you have, but your attitude is infectious. I need to borrow some of that myself. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this one. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. Okay, don't go yet, please. 2 favors. I ask simply 2 favors. One, if you could please download the iTunes app. You could do it on your phone. You can do it on the computer. Take 60 seconds and leave a review. It means a lot. 2, you can find my episodes on several social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Find the one that you like the most. Find the one where you tend to have a lot of friends and followers. And if you could please either share it in the case of Facebook and LinkedIn, or retweet it on Twitter, that would mean the world to me. So those are the 2 asks I have. I love putting together this podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thank you so much, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.